First, you want to square up your edge to make sure you have a nice straight edge. I line my ruler at the bottom of the fabric to make sure I'm cutting a straight line at 90 degrees. Then you'll flip your fabric over and cut one 2.5-inch strip by the width of fabric. This ruler is 2.5 inches wide. From that strip of fabric, you're going to cut 16 2.5-inch squares. Repeat this process with your other two fabrics. You will need 8 squares for your center fabric and 16 squares of the middle fabric and the outer fabric. So I'm just continuing to line up my ruler to make sure that I am nice and square, and I'm cutting these at 2.5 inches all the way down to the end of the fabric. With the foam ornaments I ordered, mine have a center mark here and on the other side as well. And then they have a line at the halfway mark. So you'll take one of your fabric squares, and the first thing you're gonna do is find the center point. So I fold that in half and make a crease, and then fold it in half again, make a crease, and there is your center point. Take the pin and push it through the back of the fabric. Find that center on your ornament and press your pin right into the center there. Then you're going to fold your fabric in half back. And now we're going to make a triangle. So fold down and fold down to that middle. Make your fabric nice and taut. Now you're going to take a pin and place it here by this fold, and another one right by this fold, and then a pin on the outer point, and another pin on the outer point. Now we're going to repeat the process with another square directly across from the one we just did. So fold in half to find your center point, and take your pin, push it through the back of the fabric, find the center point again, and we are going to work on the opposite side. Fold this in half and then make our triangle again. So fold down to the middle, and then place our pins to secure it in place. Just make sure that that center line, that fold in the fabric, lines up on each of the two pieces. Now we're going to do this process again for our third piece of the center fabric. Fold in half to find your center point, place the pin through the back in the center. Find your center point on the ornament, press the pin in to secure the fabric to the ornament, fold it in half towards you, and make our triangle again. So fold each side down to the middle, hold in place, and secure it with your pins. Now, one tip that I do is I adjust my fold of my fabric to make sure that no white of the ornament is showing through. So just adjust your folds, make sure that the fabric completely covers the ornament. And now we're ready to do the fourth and final piece of the center of our ornament. So now we'll take the fourth piece, we'll fold it in half again to find our center point. Place our pin through the back of the fabric in the center. And find our center in the ornament. Press our pin in place, fold the fabric in half, make our triangle, making sure that the seams, these center lines, match up and that the ornament is completely covered by fabric before placing the pins. Then take your pins and secure your fabric in place. After placing this last pin, the first step of the ornament is done. Your ornament should look like this. Now it's time to work on the middle row of fabric. You're going to repeat the same process. Fold in half to find the center point. Place the pin through the back of the fabric in the center. And then you are going to put the first pin about 3/4 of an inch from center. And it's going to be right on one of these seam lines here. Press this in place and do the same thing. Fold it in half and then fold towards the center. Now make sure the edge of your fabric, when you make this fold back, that it is parallel to this equator line on the fabric. You always want to check that and make sure that your fabric is not askew, that it's nice and parallel with that equator line around that ornament. So now our next piece is going to be directly opposite where this one is. This row is going to use 8 squares. Find your center point and directly across, you'll move this pin 3/4 an inch down from the center point. Fold your fabric in half, making sure the edges are straight with the equator. Fold in half to the middle to make your triangle and place your pins to secure the fabric in place. We'll do the same thing with the third square for this row. Find our center point. After a while, I just eyeball it. I've done so many of these, but you can continue folding to find your center point. And pull the fabric back. Make our triangle. Place our pins in place to secure the fabric. And now on this square, you'll notice that it is a little bit off. I didn't find exactly the center point. That's really okay. These do not have to be perfect, and this will be covered up in the end. It's a pretty forgiving project. We're going to do the same process with the fourth square of this row, pressing in 3/4 of an inch from the center, folding back to make our triangle, making sure the edge is parallel to that equator, and placing our pins in place to secure the fabric. Now for the fifth square in this row, place this 3/4 of an inch back and line that fold. The fabric should be straight with those other 2 points. And now pull back to make our triangle and secure that fabric in place with the pins. Another tip I have is after a while your finger might get tender from pushing all these pins in place. So I use a thimble to push them down all the way. And next we're going to take our sixth square and press that pin in place 3/4 of an inch from center. Make sure that when we fold it back, it's nice and straight with those points, and fold back to make our triangle and secure it in place with the pins. Now we're going to place our seventh square, finding the center, pushing the pin in 3/4 of an inch back, making sure they line up with those points. Fold it back to make our triangle and secure it in place with the pins. Now for the 8th square, we're gonna place the pin in the back through the center. 3/4 of an inch from the center, place our pin in the ornament, fold back, lining up the points, and then place our pins in place to hold the fabric. One thing to note, each of my folds are straight, they all line up, and you want to check that too on your ornament. Make sure that your fabric folds all line up. After the 2nd row, this is what it should look like. Now for the 3rd row of fabric, you're going to find the center point and push that pin in about 1/2 of an inch back from that center point of the middle row of fabric. Mine happens to be white. Press that pin in place, fold it back, making sure that the edge of that is parallel with the center line of the ornament, and fold to make our triangle. Place our pins in place to secure the fabric to the ornament. Now for our 2nd square on this row, we're going to find the center, work directly across from that last square we placed, place our pin 1/2 an inch back from the point of that white fabric, and then fold our fabric back in half, and again to make our triangle and secure our pins in place. For the 3rd square in this row, we're going to push our pin in the center of the fabric, place it 1/2 an inch back from the point of the white fabric, fold it back to make our triangle, and secure our pins in place. Continue this process using all 8 squares of this 3rd row of fabric. Your ornament should now look like this. 1/2 is completed. Our fabric is all lined up with the halfway point. We're going to find our center on the other side of the ornament and repeat the process for this other side. So I use a skinny ribbon to hang the ornament, and then I'm using this wider crochet ribbon to cover the seams where the fabric is. And I found these bead end caps and pearl pins that I'm going to use just as a decoration. So take the skinny ribbon, which is cut at 9 inches, fold it in half, making sure it's not twisted, line up the ends, place it along the seam, and then I use pins to secure that ribbon in place. So it should look like this. Then I take the wide crochet ribbon. This covers all the edges of the fabric, and I place a couple pins in place to secure this. Make sure that that skinny ribbon loop is pulled off to the side. Wrap this ribbon around, and when you come back, you're going to pull the loop over to the other side. Make sure it's not twisted. Fold the raw edge of this crochet ribbon under. Make sure it's lined up nice and straight, and that ribbon, skinny ribbon, is centered. And then place several pins in place to secure this ribbon. Push the pins in place, Now open the loop like this, and I place a pin on either side to hold this loop open, just right on either side of the fold of the crochet ribbon. Push those in place. And now here's where I use that pearl pin and the bead cap. This adds a nice finish. So I push the pearl pin through the hole of the bead cap, press that down in the center, and it covers those pins. So now your DIY no-sew quilted ornaments are finished. I think they turned out beautifully. They would make a great gift and a special heirloom piece.